What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Slate Thursday Sports Edition. That means we will tackle multiple sports. Really, it's pretty self-explanatory. Gary and Thorne, I am Adam Kaufman. Jeff Ulrich will join us in just a little bit. Thanks for hanging out with us for the next, 35 minutes, wherever you're finding us. DraftKings, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. Gary, it must be the fourth week of February, and if the fourth week of February ever had a Christmas, today would be that day, because that means the NBA is returning from the All-Star break. We got a whole bunch of action going on tonight, unless of course you are Damian Lillard and Jeremy Grant. Apparently you can't play. You need the night off for rest coming out of the All-Star break. What the heck is going on?
I mean, I think there's extenuating circumstances here. If the best of my knowledge, the timeline on this is the Blazers plane, their team plane tried to take off out of Portland yesterday afternoon. The players sat in the plane on the tarmac from like 2 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and then were told to go home. And then they were, I believe at like 4:45 this afternoon, they were just taking off to get to Sacramento. Now, I assume the flight
we know they're flying in like puddle jumpers. So
yeah,
this has got to be really taxing.
So I'm thinking most likely this is like a limited warm-up time. Let's not force things with our two best players. I don't know. I mean, look, I think the Blazers, maybe they're just looking for reasons to lose games at this point. Hard to tell, but I would blame the snow before I blamed the players. But that's just me.
I am old man shaking fist at cloud, just thinking about the days of...
Yeah, the snow clouds. That's where your anger should be.
I guess so, but I don't know. Like, I just think of the days where, and I know this is a movie, but this was real life as well. Not specifically the two same, you know where I'm going with this. Like I picture like the plane in Major League and the Flyers going through the turbulence, going to Detroit or wherever they were flying, having to get off the plane and play those games. That's what it was like back in the day. I mean, maybe not that exact same circumstance, but that's what it was like. Players today, they're getting coddled. I'm not even going to call them soft, because it's not even their decision, Gary, and they're getting coddled.
I mean, would it have been in the best interest of my narrative that like Lillard didn't release a new rap song that he recorded and wrote on the plane as they were sitting on the tarmac? Maybe. But again, this is the current version of the NBA we live in. Yeah. And I'll say this. This was a slate that, in my opinion, lacked a little like pizzazz, just because it was so healthy. That this kind of changes the whole dynamic. So in a way, it's sort of fun.
Gary is choosing chaos. So let's talk a little bit about it, because like we said, we've got a hefty slate tonight. It gets underway in about an hour and a half to the minute, as a matter of fact. And your top stars, and as Gary said, you got a zillion guys in the 10K range tonight. I'm just going up and down this list, all right, in no particular order. Luka Doncic, obviously Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You have LeBron James, Anthony Davis, both for LA. Jason Tatum coming off his record-setting 55-point outing in the All-Star game, where there was so much defense. Domantas Sabonis. You also have Ja Morant, Kyrie Irving, and Pascal Siakam to round out the 10K range. Do you have a favorite one or two guys that you're going to build around?
Yeah, I would say my favorite play is probably Joel Embiid, who clocks in just over $11,000 tonight. This is a very classic debate we have had the last couple of seasons when the 76ers and the Nuggets are playing on the same night. Is it an Embiid night or is it a Jokic night? I think I lean Embiid just because of the matchup here. I just worry about Memphis's ability to defend the paint and the glass against Joel Embiid. Obviously, Steven Adams has not played for a couple of weeks now. He's not expected back for a couple of weeks. And that leaves the Grizzlies very undersized in the front court. And Embiid is someone who scored over 60 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 games. The last time he faced the Grizzlies, even with Steven Adams available, he almost dropped 70 DraftKings points. And in the month of February, with Steven Adams out, Memphis has the lowest total rebounding rate in the Western Conference. So if they're going to start like Brandon Clark, I just don't think they have much of a chance at stopping Joel Embiid. So I think this could be one of those ceiling nights for Joel. And we know a Joel Embiid ceiling night is like 80 or 90 DraftKings points. So even in a matchup where these two teams aren't exactly the highest paced teams in the league, Memphis is actually a very good defensive team. I just think they're going to struggle with this one specific thing because they do not have the size to match up with Embiid.
So I figured you were going to present one of a couple of different guys, Embiid obviously being one of them. Great spot for him tonight. The other, and it's hard to bet against a guy because you want to talk ceiling games. We know what he's capable of, but not Nikola Jokic, but rather Luka Doncic, who is $11,900. He comes in at the highest price point of all the available players tonight, but such a favorable matchup going up against the Spurs tonight. Not unlike Embiid, projected to be in the neighborhood of 60 or so fantasy points. Another guy who's obviously capable of totally breaking a slate. And, we've seen him go for 100 fantasy points. Not that I expect that with Kyrie Irving by his side, but what do you think of Luka tonight as your a pivot off of Embiid, if you will?
I still just think there's too many variables with that particular spot. Again, I'm not here to say that if you want to use Luka Doncic, that's a bad idea. He's obviously one of the best DFS assets we have in the league currently. However, with that price tag, I think he brings a little bit more risk than a lot of the other guys on this slate over 10K. And it's nothing that he's done wrong. It's just the circumstances surrounding him. Kyrie Irving is going to be back and playing in this game. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to be healthy and playing in this game. We just haven't seen a lot of this Mavericks team with all these pieces healthy since this trade went down with the Nets. So I'm still a little worried we're not going to see the 37% usage rate Luka Doncic that we've come to know and love. And even though this matchup seems ideal against the Spurs, and it is on paper, this is one of those classic situations where it might be too good a matchup, where this game is just non-competitive in the second half and Luka doesn't have to play a minute in the fourth quarter. So there are certainly outcomes where Luka Doncic is the highest scoring player on this slate. I just think those are a little more rare than maybe some of the other guys. I would actually prefer at the same position, probably going with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's also in a fantastic spot, but in what should be a far more competitive game. When you talk about Oklahoma City going up against the Utah Jazz, I mean, that is the highest implied total according to the DraftKings Sportsbook, and I think it makes sense. You've got two teams that rank inside the top 10 in pace so far in the month of February. The Jazz have the third worst defensive rating in the NBA in that span of time, giving up over 122 opponent points per 100 possessions. SGA has showcased a much higher ceiling than we've come to see with him in the past. I think with the savings there, I mean, it's almost $1,500 you're saving at the point guard position. I'd rather go with SGA. And I also think there are some value options in that game in particular that are now a little bit more tolerable considering what their ownership probably was prior to the Dame news and what their ownership might be now after the Dame news.
So it sounds crazy to say, I guess, because you never want to fade Jokic, but based on the available options tonight and the health, as you talked about, and just all the different directions you could go in, is Jokic a guy that's really kind of off your radar?
Probably not off the radar, but again, I do think this is just, you have to make a call between Embiid and Jokic. And
I'll put it this way. How many lineups do you think you would have to build before you got to Jokic being in one of them?
I might have 5% exposure. It's hard to leave us. If you're mass building lineups, it's hard to ever have a slate where Jokic is on it and you're completely faded.
Right.
And I do think this is a spot where his ownership might be lower than it normally is, just for, a lot of the reasons we've talked about. There are more desirable matchups for some of these big name stars, because really, when you think about what team in the league would be the least desirable matchup for a center, Cleveland's pretty high on that list. I mean, not only do they have the interior size and just depth, really, when it comes to defensive bigs to maybe corral, because no one's stopping Jokic, but you can corral him and slow him down slightly. And also, Cleveland's just a slow-paced team. So this could be a slower game, a more defensive-minded game. I don't think this game is going to be within 25 points of the highest scoring game of the night when we look back tomorrow. So again, if you want Jokic in your lineup, it's never a bad idea. I just don't think this is the night where I'd be looking for mass exposure.
So hear how I'm phrasing this one. If you were to find value in the 10K range, is there a better option than Domantas Sabonis?
No, I think that's a pretty good one, just because, again, on a slate with these two centers, you're going to find a lot of the time that people are sort of overlooking Sabonis. I would just worry now. This morning, I like this play a lot. After the Dame news, I have a similar worry that we were talking about with the Dallas San Antonio thing, where this game could just get ridiculous at a certain point. I mean, I think Sabonis has a chance to really take advantage of a great matchup. There is no one wearing a Trailblazers jersey tonight that can defend Domantas Sabonis in the post. However, now that we're looking at a game where like Cam Reddish is going to take 25 shots, the Kings could really just not have to care about this all that much once we get to the midway point of the third quarter. So Sabonis is perfectly fine. Just be aware that with this news about Damian Lillard and Jeremy Grant, there is now far more blowout potential in this spot than there had been 3 hours ago.
Well, and it's crazy too, because again, I'm looking at projections where I find them, because again, I know there are different places that you can do that. And because of this Portland news, you might have otherwise, like you said, with all the health, you might have thought about building out a lineup when we're talking DFS that's more balanced top to bottom. You can really be heavy stars and scrubs in this one. Maybe you can even get a couple of 10K guys in your lineup, because there is absurd value on the Portland side. I mean, basically everybody who is sub 4K is in a great spot tonight for the Blazers. You've got Keon Johnson, who is projected to be in almost 80% of lineups as we sit here right now, barring whatever may happen in the next hour and a half. Nasir Little, north of 50% of lineups. So where are you looking? How many of these guys do you want to build out a lineup just so that you can have more exposure to some of those higher price guys elsewhere?
So I think you can't go wrong with the two guys you already named, Johnson and Little. Little actually has a surprisingly high usage rate when Lillard and Simons and Nurkic are not on the floor so far this season. I also think Shadon Sharp, like I said, Cam Reddish was firing up shots in his first game with the Trailblazers. That will not be rectified tonight, where no one else is challenging him for those shots. Even if you want to use someone like Matisse Thybulle, who I think is just going to play a lot of minutes, like he's not someone who your mind automatically starts thinking like, oh yeah, Thybulle's usage rate is going to be 25% in this game. No, but he might now play 35 minutes and do enough in like blocks and steals where he could possibly have an impact. Although obviously his floor is much, 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 much lower than some of these other guys. But I would say the thing that this does that is really interesting on this slate is, prior to this news, there was no obvious place to go for value. I think most people, what they were going to do was probably go to the Jazz, who were missing Colin Sexton, and kind of look at this and go, okay, we can go with like a Talen Horton-Tucker, who I still think is a very good play. Kelly Olynyk is a really good play. But I think the Jazz in a very up-tempo, high-scoring game are going to be a very popular source of, like, not 3K value, but mid-tier value.
Well, Kessler's another one, but he's
a little bit more expensive, but yeah,
he's more of a mid-range guy.
And I think the other option was going to be the Spurs, because you have Trey Jones, doubtful for this game, probably not going to play. Jeremy Sochan is questionable, so maybe he does come back and play in this contest, and that would affect some of the guard stuff because he is a point forward, quote unquote. But I think Malachi Branham is once again a very, very viable play, considering he's played at least 30 minutes 5 times this season. He's averaging 35.1 DraftKings points in those 5 games. And there's no reason for me to think he's not going to exceed 30 minutes once again in this contest. So I think, again, Nick Whalen and I, RotoWire's Nick Whalen, we were on The Sweat this morning, and they had asked us independently, find value plays for this slate. We didn't talk to each other beforehand, and the 2 names we both came up with were Malachi Branham and Talen Horton-Tucker. And that really was a good indication of how much ownership those 2 players were going to possess on this slate before we got that news about Portland. So now, in a weird way, I still think they'll be popular, but so much ownership is going to drift now to the Portland side of things. I'm less afraid to play those 2 guys where I was maybe this morning, because they were just going to be the chalkiest chalk.
All right, let's go to the betting side. Take a look at the DraftKings Sportsbook, because just in the interest of time, I don't think we fully exhausted DFS. There's a lot of different stuff we could do there, but Jeff Ulrich's going to be joining us momentarily. You may even see him on your screens already. Let's discuss NBA on the betting side of things. It's interesting. I guess it doesn't really matter because you don't have to have correlation between these games unless you're building on a parlay, obviously. But The higher scoring games, Garion, are slated to come later on in the evening, not so
Mhm.
much with the 7 o'clock starts on the East Coast. So what direction are you looking in as far as your best bets go?
Yeah, I mean, I think those totals are kind of interesting. When you look at the San Antonio game, I think the total's a little high. I'd be leaning towards the under here. And again, I think a big part of that for me is one, San Antonio's offense in general is pretty underwhelming. They are not an efficient offense. In fact, they are one of the worst offenses in the NBA for the season as a whole. So much of this total is baked into the fact that the Mavericks are just going to have their way with this Spurs defense. But like I said, if we get to a place where the fourth quarter does not matter at all, I don't think you're going to see Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving out there taking shots. I just don't think the Spurs live up to their end of the bargain tonight to carry this total to 240 points or 239 points. I think this goes under. I think it pretty clearly goes under. And again, you have to remember the Mavericks, one of the slowest paced teams in the NBA.
Yeah.
That might change if Luka's not on the court. He's kind of the visionary behind their very slow half court offense. But I think there's a lot of factors here that make me think this game is not going to be as high scoring as maybe some anticipate it might.
Well, that's what makes me kind of weary of that game, as well as the Portland Sacramento game. When you just see these spreads as large as they are, double digit spreads, the point total's nice, but you start to worry about teams coasting toward the end, when do benches come in, all of that. I look at this and look, they're not the top two teams in the NBA or anything like that, or even the most exciting to watch necessarily, although young up and comers. But when I look at OKC and Utah, and a point total of 239, but more notably as it relates to that, the 1 point spread, the fact that this game could go in any and all directions, that gets the blood flowing, man. That's the hairs standing up on my arms. Excitement for that game. Just to I'm chasing the over on that.
And that over is moving too. That number started the day at 241.5, I think, maybe even 242. So it's being bet down. But I'm with you. I think two high-paced offenses. I think this game's going to matter. Jeff will be in soon to talk hockey bets, but one of the things with hockey when you're taking overs and unders is like, hey, are they going to pull the goalie the last 2.5 minutes? Because that could certainly help. Free throws in a close NBA game, extra possessions where timeouts are being used to bring the ball up the court, more shots in smaller amounts of time, free throws where the clock is stopped. Like these things matter. And I think this game's going to be close, and I think it does go over.
Any last NBA thoughts before we bring Jeff in here?
No, let's bring in Jeff. Come on.
All right, bring in Jeff. Let's in the spirit of unifying Canada. We've already got you. Let's bring in Moose. Jeff Ulrich, good to see you again. Good to be have you here with us. We were talking about maybe mixing in a little NFL before we're done, but your bread and butter, especially right now, my friend, it's on the ice. So let's stay with the DraftKings Sportsbook. Where are you looking tonight?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a couple spots I like. So wrote up today, Devils in a pretty nice spot. I think minus 140, the money line. You could take that. I actually don't hate taking them on the puck line tonight. They've been really good at bouncing back from bad losses, obviously coming off a bad loss. Kings were out in Minnesota 2 days ago, so they've traveled east. Really don't have that great goaltending. If anything, I think their goaltending is probably in a spot to regress here soon. They won they won 5 in a row, then they dropped a game to Minnesota. This just feels like a spot where the Devils at home waiting for a team that, kind of a little fatigue, maybe a little bit just been playing over its head. Devils are really good. So I like them in that spot. I think the minus 140, especially on the money line, that's pretty good odds for the Devils at home, man. And then the other spot I really like is the Golden Knights. Flames played last night. They have not been good, especially all season on, in these rest spots. I can't remember if it's a 3 and 4 rest spot or if it's just a back-to-back. They obviously played last night anyways, but the trends definitely go against them there. Golden Knights, I think, are just a good matchup for Calgary too. They do have the elite defense that can kind of skate with Calgary. So I really like that money line you're getting. There's also a nice parlay there. You can get the under 6.5 goals and the Vegas Golden Knights. When I looked at it this morning, it was plus 215. I like that play. The trends for both these teams have kind of been in the unders in the spot. Calgary on back-to-backs this year is 9-1-1 to the under. So that's really good. And Vegas in 2 of their last, Vegas has gotten under 6.5 goals in 8 of their last 10 games, excuse me. So it's been good trends towards the under there. And like I said, I think that's a really fair price on the Golden Knights with Calgary on a back-to-back. So probably my two favorite spots. But there's some goal scoring props too.
Yeah.
If you're looking there, definitely check out the Canucks Blues game. I mean, a 7 total, weak goalies on both sides. Anthony Bolivier, if you go there, Koff, really good price on him to score anytime goal tonight. Playing on the top line with Pettersson. It was two. I think it stayed the same all day. 210 this morning.
Yeah,
it's still 210.
Yep.
Yeah. He's been playing on the power play. He's a power play specialist. His ice time is ramped up since he's played with the Islanders, and the Blues have the 9th worst penalty kill. So I think those are more than fair odds on Bolivier. I would have rated him down probably in the like plus 150 range there, just with his role and everything. So I think that, that's a good game just to look too. Like you can even look down the board. I mean, Garland is plus 200. Rob Thomas, former singer of, who was Rob Thomas? Who was the singer?
Matchbox 20.
Matchbox 20. Yeah, man, there's such a good joke, and I screwed it up.
I just automatically think of Santana.
Okay, well there you go.
That's
right, yeah, because I screwed that joke up. It was such a good joke. But yeah, anyways, there's names here. You can go down the board.
So when you brought up the 7 spot, typically when we're doing this, and maybe something has changed, you tell me, but I mean, like 5.5's low, 6.5 pretty regular. We've got 3 games with 7 goal totals tonight. Is it just the matchups, or are we seeing the goal scoring trending up?
No, definitely a little bit of both. I mean, the matchups are definitely a part of it. I mean, the Sabres are always a team. I don't know where they're at right now, but they've been top 3 in goals per game all season long, and they allow a lot of quality chances, and they have weak goaltending. So whenever the Sabres are involved, that's not shocking. The Canucks and Blues are 2 of the worst defense teams in the league. So again, not shocking, and they actually have good offenses. A lot of this is just the matchups as we're talking through it. So, that's part of it. And then obviously the Oilers, another really high scoring team. So part of it's the matchups. Part of it is though the trend, the goals, just kind of flowing a little bit more towards the end of the year. The odds always fluctuate kind of as the league goes, and definitely been on a bit of an uptrend of late, but I tend to just stay away from thinking about overs once it gets to 7. If anything, you probably want to be going against the trends and looking at the unders in a couple of those games.
We did a lot of NBA with Gary and DFS specifically. So if we're looking at daily fantasy when it comes to hockey tonight, you mentioned Edmonton and the amount of goals that obviously the Oilers are scoring. It's your team. I look right at the top of the list when it comes to the price point tonight, 9,500. Connor McDavid, even still, despite that, he is in a good spot. If he is Zeus, then Leon Draisaitl is Hercules in this situation. I want to roster both of them, is what I'm saying to you, Jeff. I want to put them both in the same lineup. I want to pay up. I want to find my value elsewhere, because I can't imagine a world where these guys disappoint me.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. And like Connor McDavid against the Penguins has been pretty money over his career as well. So obviously gets up for playing Sidney Crosby. And there is a lot of value in a couple other spots. So, you don't have to play McDavid and Draisaitl to 10-game slate. I mentioned the Vancouver top line. I think that's really good. That's a really good pivot. And Jack Hughes is on the slate. But certainly, you can play McDavid. And, again, looking to the wing is a really good place to start. The Vancouver Canucks, plenty of wingers. Already went over Bolivier, but Connor Garland at 3,300. Cheap, top 6 role. Just really good, fantasy production. Takes a lot of shots on net. That's fine. You could even stay in this range and take a shot with like Capo Caco at 3,300. Again, goal scorer. He's more of a boomer bust type play, but certainly if he gets on the board, Jacob Verana at 2,900 is in play. Again, similar type of play there. The Minnesota forwards actually are someone else.
What about Connor Sheary?
Sheary's, I don't. The Capitals' offense have been really bad of late, but they're playing the Ducks. Ovechkin might be back.
Did you say Garland with Vancouver?
What's that?
Did you say Garland with Vancouver?
Yeah, Connor Garland.
Yeah. So I was going to say that's another option. I'm just looking at some of the cheaper wingers that are in good spots.
Matt Boldy is another one. He's 5,500, so he's a little bit up there, but. Yeah, no, Sheary, absolutely. I wouldn't be shocked if the Capitals broke out a little bit tonight. They've been really bad, but they're playing the Ducks. I mean, the Ducks are legitimately might be like the worst professional franchise in any sport right now. They're just awful.
Silverberg could be a good play in that game, though, on the other side.
Sorry, who was that?
Silverberg.
Yeah, Jakob Silverberg, absolutely. I don't hate taking a cheap duck or two. You want to be a little bit careful. The Capitals are still a decent defensive team, although I think Carlson's still out, so it may not be a bad night to take on a duck or two. I probably wouldn't stack them or anything, but Silverberg is definitely a player who, he can put up 4 shots and a goal, 2,700. Yeah, I don't hate that at all. So
really,
like I said, there's value everywhere, kind of on the slate.
But there's no, and maybe you disagree, but I'm just kind of, crossing some numbers here. There's no great goalie play tonight, is there?
There's 10. It depends what you're playing. Like if you're playing cash games, would you say, like, is there a lock guy? Yeah, you're probably right. Like Halak's starting for the Rangers and Detroit's been good. So that's a tough. Marc-Andre Fleury against the Blue Jackets is probably where I would go, like to be like the safe. And I think Vitek Vanacek is also actually in a pretty good spot. I can't remember his home splits off the top of my head, but I think he's got pretty strong home splits. So those are 2 guys like I would look for to just cash games. But, GPPs, goalies, you can kind of take as much variance on as you want. Like, goaltender is such a high volatile spot where if you pick the right underdog and no one's on him and he stops like 40 shots, you can win a slate with something like that. So, UC Saros down there at 7,200 would definitely pique my interest. He's dominated the Sharks in his career. Ville Husso's played good. He's only 7,100. Tough matchup, but again, the Rangers are starting a backup, so Detroit's played well. Those are the kind of guys I would be looking for in GPPs. But yeah, I think the 2 most consistent kind of like top end guys who are actually fairly priced are Fleury and Vanacek.
All right. Anything else you want to mix in hockey wise before we do a couple other things before we get out of here?
No, that's good. We can talk whatever, man. I definitely went over the main bets I'm looking at tonight. So
excellent. I just, I similar to how you were just sitting there while Garion was talking NBA. Now he's sitting there while you're talking hockey. Let's involve both of you for the final few minutes of this show before, Eamon and Undercover Boss Tom both tell us all 3 of us to get the heck out of here. Normally I would say this is some sort of a, I don't know, metaphor, but quite literally Aaron Rodgers has emerged from the darkness. And so now what is his future, Gary? And he was supposed to take this time to decide, is he going to play for the Packers? Does he want to play somewhere else? Or does he just want to hang him up and retire? What direction are we going to go here?
I can confidently say there is no person I feel less comfortable giving their mental state than Aaron Rodgers. I don't know, man. I really don't. I just don't. I don't know. Like he's so weird.
It's hard to have a gut feeling on this guy, isn't it, Jeff?
He's just paid to go lock himself in darkness. He could have just gone to his basement for 4 days. Yes, he's very.
Did you see the specifics of this thing? It's like underground, yes. 3,000 square feet with a bed in the bathroom, basically, is all the man had.
Turn the lights off in his basement. Yeah. I could have done it in my basement. You could have paid me like whatever you paid that fee. Come on, man.
And I bet it was really expensive. He didn't go to some low rent darkness.
Oh no, that's creepy. No,
yeah, it's the highest. He didn't go to some haunted property. This is high end. Lock yourself in a basement.
I think yeah. Go ahead, Karen. Sorry.
I would just say if I had to handicap this, there's only 3 places he could end up. It's Green Bay, Las Vegas, or New York.
Yeah.
I think most likely he just stays in Green Bay because that's kind of just what we've gotten time after time after time, rift after rift after rift. Remember 3 years ago when we thought that's it, Jordan Love. Oh man, that is a bridge too far, sir. There is no way they're coming back from this. And 2 MVP trophies later, we're still having these weird conversations. I'll say I think the Jets are maybe putting on a really, really great show for the Packers right now. Just oh yeah, no, we'd totally love to have Derek Carr. He's maybe a first ballot Hall of Famer. No, we'd be fine with that. I think maybe they're getting a little too overboard with maybe trying to get the Packers off their scent. But I think when this is said and done, he's a Packer.
What about Bobby Wagner and the Rams parting ways? 9-time All-Pro linebacker is going to be a free agent. This was announced just a little while ago. Adam Schefter has a story about it out there on the web as well. I realize this, it's not a skill position. This isn't going to have some dramatic impact on DFS or probably any sports betting futures or anything like that. But Jeff, if you're looking at this, is there any interest in this to you as far as where Wagner winds up?
I mean, like if he goes to a team that's already stacked, like I don't know, let's say the Bengals got him. I mean, I think it would help. I mean, I think those are the type of players that the Bengals could use. I don't really know. I don't want to pretend that I'm some sort of expert and I know exactly how much Bobby Wagner has left in the tank. But again, like if he can fill a role and potentially like help out a team like that, kind of similar to what maybe Von Miller did like for the Bills for a bit. I mean, it could lead to something, but other than that, no. I mean, not a huge guy that I'm too worried. I think the move spells more just the Rams. There could be more pain for Rams fans down the road here. It's probably going to be an ugly season coming up.
And yet, Sean McVay's sticking around for it. Gary, what do you think? Anything on Wagner?
I mean, as soon as Jeff said the Bengals, I was like, yeah, he probably wouldn't have, hit Patrick Mahomes well out of bounds. So, that's nice. Yeah, look, Wagner, I think he's probably still a pretty solid player. I mean, the defense was not the issue with the Rams this season.
Yeah.
I'm sure like you said, Koff, it's not going to move any lines. We're not going to see like, not to say defensive player movement can't change lines. I mean, obviously when, we saw a guy like Khalil Mack go to the Chargers last season, like that was impactful in terms of the lines and just everything they were doing in general. I don't think Wagner's going to have that effect, but if he ends up as a veteran linebacker on a young defense that really could use some presence and some veteran presence in that lineup, I think it's definitely a positive.
All right. Well, we've hit the top of the hour, which means we need to go. That is according to Eamon, the Instagrammer, and Tom, the shopkeeper. So, Gary and Jeff, thank you both very much for spending time with us. Moose, you'll be back at it with the slate tomorrow. So, about 23 hours from now with Matt LaMarca, who hopefully he will emerge from his darkness and be part of that show. And the sweat, of course, is tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you check that out. If there's anything as it relates to the NBA and NHL that you missed on this show that you want to relive, you got an hour to do that before lineups lock, or of course your bets get locked in depending on which games you're looking at. I am Adam. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for watching. Everybody have a great night. Bye, guys.